fellow Zionists, for joining Jewish National Fund USA's weekly briefing. I am Sal Isbrahim, president of Jewish National Fund USA. It is day 236 of the war in Israel. We continue to stay focused and engaged on the war, and we'll keep bringing you updates as the situation evolves, while sharing the direct impact of JNF USA's work on the ground. But we're shifting our perspective away from a post-October 7th world to showcase the beauty of Zionism. We need to inspire people and move away from despair. JNF USA wants to show that Zionism comes in all colors, shapes, and sizes. Zionism is inclusive, diverse, beautiful, and respectful. That, in fact, Zionism is a unifier, not a divider. Our first guest today is Dr. Naya Lek. Born in the former Soviet Union and arriving in the United States in 1989, Naya is a trained literary scholar using her passion and expertise in the fields of literary criticism, history, and pedagogy to educate and instill pride in the Jewish community. Among her many accomplishments, Naya is a published author, research fellow, and former scholar in residence at Oxford University through the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism. And Naya is a Jerusalem Post columnist. Naya works with Jewish educational nonprofits, day schools, and synagogues across the country to create programming around Zionism, the history of anti-Semitism, and Jewish identity. Naya, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a huge, huge honor. Just a quick thumbs up. Do you all hear me? Thank you. So it's a huge honor. I think I recognize some faces and names. I want to just before beginning, I want to say that the JNF has a kind of special place in our family's, my family's memory. My mother told me, and so I am from the former Soviet Union, and I'm from a city called Chernovitz, which is in Ukraine now. It's in Western Ukraine. And my mother said that prior to the Second World War, there were JNF boxes in Chernovitz that my great-grandmother, would hang over her gate. And there were other Jews who were doing this because they were putting in money to buy property, to buy out land for the Jewish people's return to Eretz Yisrael. And I remember when my mother told me this and continued telling me this when I was a little kid, it just solidified in me. And this is kind of what I want to discuss today, how beautiful Zionism is for the Jewish people. It's part of who we are. It's our identity. And that's the conversation I want to have with you guys today. I know it's hard to move past October 7th. And in many ways, everything we do now, everything I do now, is shaped by October 7th and shaped by what's happening to our people who are hostages in the terror tunnels. It's tough. So you can hear it in my voice. It is very tough. But just a bit about what I do. I spend most of my time actually on the ground, meaning with students, with educators, with the Jewish community. And I prefer to do that because I want to be where the pulse is. I want to be with I want to be shaping people's spirits and minds. So today, as I will speak, I'll also share some stories of students who have challenged me, students who I have challenged about Zionism. So I'll begin by asking I love the Socratic method when I teach, and I begin with a series of questions. So what is Zionism? And what does it mean to be a Zionist? And then, of course, what does it mean to be a Zionist when the Zionist dream has been fulfilled? So these are rhetorical questions at the moment. I'm sure everyone has so much to say. And I think it's the most pressing question for us today. I will say this, that I have been involved in Jewish advocacy. And notice, I do not say Israel advocacy, I say Jewish advocacy. And I'll explain why later on. I've been involved with Jewish advocacy since I was an undergraduate, and I'll date myself right now. It was the year 2001, 2002, up in the Bay Area in California. And at that time, two world events collided, or rather occurred almost simultaneously. And that was the 9/11, and a year later, the Second Intifada. These two events really created what we know today now as anti-Zionism. But at that time, American Jewry didn't really use that terminology. And I remember I was a college student on campus, and what I was hearing is that Zionism is racism, Israel is an apartheid. This is back then. Israel is an apartheid state. All these invectives hurled at me, and I was called a Zionist pig. And something that was happening at that time on college campuses was this campaign known Take Back the Night. So Take Back the Night usually highlighted or amplified voices such as, for instance, victims of rape and sexual violence. So they would say, take back the night, let's amplify, let's highlight voices of people who deserve to speak about issue X, Y, and Z. I remember thinking, oh, I want to have a Take Back the Night Zionism. I want to take back, because why? Because our enemies, our detractors have been very good they're at the wheel. They've been at the wheel and they've been telling the story of what Zionism is. And it angers me, I have to say, that we Jews, one, we may not even be united as to what is Zionism. And I ask it everywhere I go. So I speak in synagogues, I speak in schools, I speak to college students. I went to UC Berkeley this year. So I always ask, what is Zionism? And I have to tell you, the fact that we don't all have the same answer is kind of cool on the one hand, because it shows that we are such a diverse people. But on the other hand, it seems like we don't have our story straight in a way, and a lot of confusion as to what is Zionism. So as I said to you, and I'm going to say it again, is I grew up in a very Zionist home. For my family, Israel was present at every conversation, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and car rides. It was just, everywhere. And so when I went to college again and I heard certain things, I knew we were dealing with a real problem. The other thing that I saw was that the Jewish organizations, the Jewish campus leaders did not want to deal with it, or maybe were not equipped to deal with this. And as I have been watching this delegitimization campaign, that's what I think anti-Zionism is as well. In addition to being an anti-Semitic campaign, it's a delegitimization campaign unfold. I noticed that many of our detractors, and sometimes they are Jews themselves, engaged in discourse that alienated Jews from Zionism and from Israel. Now, what do I mean by this? So, as you know, I do literary criticism. I just finished teaching the novel 1984 by George Orwell. And boy, wow, it's completely prescient. Now, one of the things that Orwell, among many things that he deals with in that novel, is he reveals how very critical language is to shaping our reality. Now, of course, he's showing us a totalitarian state, the big brother, the party, and how this big brother basically forces citizens to use certain terms, newspeak, in order for them to be obedient citizens. Now, how does George Orwell come to a conversation on Zionism? That could be an interesting title in itself. Well, he presents to us the following question: can a concept exist if the word for it doesn't exist? And I immediately again thought of our detractors who express the following line of logic. They say, well, because Zionism as a word did not exist prior to the 19th century, and Zionism as a movement did not exist prior to the 19th century, and because Zionism is a product of European nationalism, Zionism is an ideology. Zionism is a political movement. And you know what, any other ideology, it has to be scrutinized, it has to be studied. And if it's deemed to be wicked, it has to be eradicated, right? Think of Nazism, communism. These isn't ideologies, right? I want to say a few things about that because I've been watching for, as I say, for 20 years, this delegitimization campaign of anti-Zionism unfold and our response in the Jewish community. Most of the time when I ask people what is Zionism, they say Zionism is an idea, the belief that Jewish people should go back and live in the land of Israel. Is that wrong? No, it's not wrong, but it's missing a core component. Zionism is not an ideology only, and it's not a movement only. It is core, it's part of who we are as an identity, as in a people. For instance, we say the word pro-Israel. I don't use the word pro-Israel. I say pro-Jewish, for instance, because nobody would say I'm pro-Shabbat, I'm pro-Hanukkah, because those are core components to who we are as Jews. And so that's why I think language is so very central here. Our detractors are not wrong in pointing out that Zionism, in fact, it's true. Nathan Birnbaum coined the term Zionism in 1892 or 1891. It's true. So it begs the question, since the word did not exist, were we not Zionists in the 15th century? Were the Jews who were exiled for 2,000 years up until Herzl, were they not Zionists then? I ask this question of my students all the time. Now, I work with students from public schools, so there are a lot of secular Jews, and I work now with a lot of Jews in the modern Orthodox setting. Very interesting populations, very disparate responses. And I have to say that at least with this Jewish kids, Jewish students, mostly teenagers, high schoolers, who are at least in a modern Orthodox school, when I ask them, okay, so what would you say if somebody told you, listen, Zionism is a political movement. Zionism did not exist before Herzl. What would you say? And they said to me, well, Naya, that's absolutely not true, because look at our text, look at our liturgy. It is steeped with a passionate call to return to Eretz Israel. It is steeped in that. And they're not wrong. You see, if we take a look at the word Zionism, it consists of a root and a suffix. The root is Tzion. Tzion appears over 150 times in the Tanakh, in our Siddur, over hundreds of times, right? At the end of Passover, we don't say next year in Palestine or Ramallah, we say next year in Jerusalem. No, I'm not trying to be cheeky or funny. These are important things because they're part of Jewish identity. Why am I saying this? I think we need to start conceptualizing about Zionism not as an ideology or a movement, but as core to who we are as Jews. The suffix ism, it's actually kind of it's a Greek word, but it means mandate or belief. So I ask my students, how strange, that word Zionism is a kind of quirky word, a belief in a place, right? Zion, I ask them, Zion, person, place, or thing. Well, it's a place. How can you believe in a place? So it's a kind of interesting word in and of itself. But the point that I want to say is when Herzl envisioned the Jewish state, Europe was very much the lab for Jewish thinkers and activists who had had enough of this surge of anti-Semitism. His peers, so Herzl, Nathan Birnbaum, Max Nordau, to name a few of the leading Jewish individuals thinking very deeply about Jewish safety, they rallied around Zionism as a movement. They did. Yes, Zionism as a political movement was born in the late 19th century, but Zionism, my grandmother and her great-grandmother and her great-great, this, they were all Zionists. I teach a class also, something known as proto-Zionists. Moses is a proto-Zionist, right? Or Yehuda Halevi. Yehuda Halevi was a poet who lived in Spain, and he wrote the most beautiful poem. My heart is in the East, and I am at the edge of the West. He is in the West in Spain, and he's yearning for the East, for Jerusalem. Is that not a manifestation of Zionism? I would venture to say that to be a Zionist in the late and early 20th century is in fact quite different from what it means to be a Zionist today. I'm not sure if we asked Herzl, I'm making a risky statement here, but I'm not sure if I asked Herzl, is Zionism core to Jewish identity? I'm not sure if he would say it is. I think he did envision it as a political movement. I think though we in the diaspora, especially in diaspora, must understand and internalize the fact that Zionism is core to our Jewish identity. So I'd like to invite you, I'm aware of time, so I'm wrapping up. So I'd like to invite you all today to re-envision Zionism as core to Jewish identity. Because, think about it for a second, if we treat Zionism as a movement or an ideology, then anti-Zionism could potentially not be anti-Semitism, because if you are against an ideology, that's not the same thing as being against a people, right? If you say that Zionism is an ideology or a movement that seeks to return the Jewish people back home and say, well, I don't agree with that movement, it's kind of make it hard to make the case that that's anti-Semitic. I think that's why we have been battling for all these years. And, please don't take this the wrong way. When I say battling, I'm in the battle too, but it's not a cumbersome battle for me. It is a most privileged place to be able to speak to students on a daily basis, to go and speak at different places where I speak to the youth, to college students, because that's where my passion is, to speak with youth about reminding them to know that Zionism is a pillar to their Jewish identity. So I'm going to wrap up and say that I often ask people, mostly Jewish people, what they think Zionism is. And they say mostly, with perhaps not the most sophistication, that Zionism is the belief that Jews have the right to live in the land of Israel. And see, while this is not a wrong statement per se, it doesn't get at the heart of the matter, because Zionism, I'm saying it again, is a core pillar of Jewish identity. And I want to stress this over and over, that if we define Zionism again as a movement or an ideology, we are providing, obviously not intentionally, but we are providing this permission slip for anti-Zionists. So I have 4 recommendations for us today. One is start talking about Zionism as core to Jewish identity. And I'm not asking anyone to lie here. We know that our ancestors who were forced to live in the diaspora longed for Zion, and that is Zionism. Language. I would love to have you feel empowered through language. So I don't call myself an Israel advocate. I don't say that I'm pro-Israel. I say I'm pro-Jewish, just like I won't say I'm pro-Shabbat or pro-Hanukkah. It's one and the same for me. And I'm going to finally conclude with a short story. So my son participates it's called Tikva, and where he learns about Zionism every week. And he has been studying the works of Herzl, Chaim Weizmann. He's very young. I should say he's 11 years old. They've been reading just pieces of letters by Herzl, Chaim Weizmann, Jabotinsky, and Ben-Gurion. And he had his final test. And they asked him, what is Zionism? And I thought to myself, okay, my son is going to answer, my son's going to answer like Zionism was born in the 19th century or something, Zionism as a movement, and would engage with different, Herzl's vision of Zionism, Ben-Gurion's, I'm also Russian, so the expectations are super high there. And I said, so what did you say? And we were in the taxi going home, and he goes, well, he said to me, I said Zionism is the Jewish soul. And I really was upset in the beginning, but I'm like, but why am I upset? That's exactly right. Zionism is, and it's the Jewish soul, Zionism. So I invite you to not just take back the narrative, take back the truth. And truth depends on language. Thank you for your comments. It was beautiful. I almost cried. I was angry at first because of course, every mother wants their child to show off. He's gonna flex the Zionist muscles, his brainy muscles, and say, well, and I said, that's all? You just wrote one line? That's it? And I was like, oh, you're so lazy, I was gonna say, but I kind of bit my lip and I thought, but that's it. Wouldn't that be so much better if all our Jewish people said Zionism is the Jewish soul? Wouldn't we be in a better place? That's where I want to conclude. And I want to just say one last thing. In my working again with youth, the youth who are right now in Jewish day schools are very privileged, because the Jewish youth in public schools in the state of California and New York are in a very terrible state. It's what's happening in public schools, especially in history classes and ELA classrooms, where you have a student, and this is not one or two, these students have told me this many times, examples of this, where the teacher comes in, pulls out the map of the world or the Middle East, and Israel's just not there. It's just not there. Or sometimes instead of Israel, it says Palestine. And you know what? Why did the Jewish student come to me and text me and tell me this? Because his soul is hurting in that moment, because Israel is part of our Jewish identity. Because when that happens in the classroom, this is an example of an assault on a core pillar of Jewish identity, Eretz Israel. So my goal today in speaking with you is to empower you to use or to reframe our conversation around Zionism as one around identity and peoplehood, and not just say that it's a movement or an ideology. That was my goal in what I wanted to tell you, everyone, today. So with that, I'm going to stop. And if anybody has any questions, please let me know. It's a privilege. JNF has a special, as I say, place in my family's history and in our family, the Jewish people's family's history. Thank you.
Anaya, first of all, thank you so much for your words. And I don't know whether to thank you or your son. Maybe I'll thank both of you, actually. And, it was a nice story about the blue box. We at JNF like to say, we think outside of the blue box. So thank you so much for being with us. I'd also like to mention that Naya is working on her first book, Israel, 10 Hardest Questions Answered. Naya is also a member of our JNF Global Speakers Bureau, and you can bring Naya to your community by visiting jnfglobalspeakers.org. Our next speaker is Dorit Friedman, Vice President of Partnerships and Development for Nefesh B'Nefesh. Since joining the founding team of Nefesh B'Nefesh, Dorit has played a key role in revolutionizing immigration to Israel, increasing the retention of North American Olim from 40 to 90%. Dorit has developed signature Nefesh B'Nefesh initiatives, including the Lone Soldier Program, Frontier Physicians, Go South and Go North initiatives, all of which address Israel's core national needs. Dorit inspires countless individuals to support the greatest Jewish project of our times, the return of a people to its historic homeland. Dorit, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Saul. And thank you, Dr. Naya Lecht, I have to say. I would like to know your son's name because I would like to quote him. Zionism is the Jewish soul. Nefesh B'Nefesh means soul to soul. And why do we have that name? Because we all can recognize that our connection to this country is a soul connection. That's with something in our bones. Sometimes it's unexplained, but it's something that we feel deep inside. So I just wanted to share with you a little of what Nefesh B'Nefesh was doing since the war began. Gary, would you be able to upload Thank you. So I would like to respect the time that I was given and to share with you briefly some of the initiatives that we've been doing since October 7th, and I'll extrapolate on a few more deeply. When October 7th happened, our world turned upside down personally in every way. Just this Shabbat, I was asking my son about when he was drafted in October 7th. He said, Mom, my friends and I weren't drafted. We just went. So October 7th, on a professional level also, we were inundated with requests for help from, we've brought 80,000 Olim to Israel, and they live all over the country in 180 communities. We were inundated with requests to help people who had to resettle to other places, evacuees, financial requests, people whose livelihoods were affected, obviously emotional help. And we had 7,000 lone soldiers who were called up. We've had 13,000 that we've brought to Israel, but those in duty and those that were called up to reserve duty were somewhere between 5,000 to 7,000. And we knew that, we need to help them. They're completely alone. In addition to the help that we were receiving, we also had requests from physicians, because for those of you who know, we have a physician fellowship. Now it's called the International Medical Aliyah Program. And we have fantastic relationship with the Ministry of Health. And we had requests from doctors from all over the world who said, we want to come and we want to help. Israeli doctors were being called up to the front. The hospitals were inundated with patients. We needed help. So what we did was the Ministry of Health asked us to create a master database of physicians, their specialties and their subspecialties, and it was distributed to different hospitals around the country and including the IDF. And we had over 230 volunteer doctors that came. I will be able to tell you about that in another minute. We created a community grants for communities around the country that were feeling intense anxiety, of husbands that were called up and wives that were left by themselves without any sort of support system and that needed help. We created a Shuk Olim for Olim whose livelihoods were affected. There are Olim that are living in the north and south and all over, whose livelihoods and entrepreneurial soldiers that simply were called up, and that's it. October 7th changed the landscape for them. So we created a virtual shuk, a virtual marketplace, and we had 150 businesses that had exposure to more than 25,000 unique visitors. We also created a hotline for parents who were so worried, parents of soldiers who could not communicate anymore with their children because their telephones were taken away. And so we became sort of like this nexus for the Olim that we've brought to Israel. Okay, I will continue to the next slide. And of course, we also gave therapeutic resources. By the way, I want to say this, that a lot of people wanted to help and give therapy, but there's something about living here and going through it that somebody who was going through it said, I can't really relate to someone who's not in this country. So we mobilized our therapists, our psychologists, our social workers, and who were giving away help and supporting individuals who needed help. Okay, sorry, 1 minute. One of our unique programs also is that we gave away, we had an emergency fund for Olim who were, really affected by this war. This was a young couple who made Aliyah, 29 years old, living in Ashkelon, and their apartment took a direct hit. We had a family that fled from Sderot. Now, this was scary for every one of us, for every Israeli. Just imagine what it's like for Olim who come and they're completely by themselves. They don't necessarily have where to go, and someone to have their back, and parents who are here to help with their children. So it was super, super stressful. And we wanted them to know we actually reached out to our South Olim and we reached out to our North Olim and we distributed funds. Our other program, as I mentioned to you before, was our volunteer physicians program. And we had incredible physicians that came, a large number of emergency ER doctors, trauma doctors, cardiothoracic surgeons, anesthesiologists, forensic pathologists. And one of the doctors had quoted something here that I thought I wanted to share. He said, I truly believe that we're living through one of the inflection points in Jewish history. And we're going to look back on this time and ask ourselves whether we did everything we could to help in this critical moment. So it was really all hands on deck. And we were able to give the doctors and connect them to the Ministry of Health and actually push this forward and bring people in. Sadly, the first doctors that came to this country were forensic pathologists. Sorry, I'm turning this the wrong way. Just want to show you a video. We, together with JNF, out of the 21 years I've been working at Nefesh B'Nefesh, this perhaps was one of the most meaningful initiatives that I've been involved in. When I was up at night, all night, worrying about my son, holding my daughter's baby, I moved in with her. It was tremendously anxiety provoking, especially if your children are combat soldiers and we're in the thick of this. And I said to myself, oh my God, what's happening with other families and other parents around the world who don't have that support system, who can't necessarily share this with other people, and they're going out of their minds with worry. So we put together a beautiful initiative called Operation Hug, which is exactly as its title says. It's to envelop in love the parents of the lone soldiers who are heroes as much as their children. And while, everybody was sending gear and whatnot to the soldiers, we said we also need to fortify the spirit or the nefesh of the soldiers on our front lines, because that makes them stronger. And how do you do that? You try to help bring one of their parents, of a combat lone soldier on the front lines. This is Ilan Cohen. I just want you to see his reunion. He's from Argentina. He had not seen his mother in a year. any parents, we said we can bring them, we'll help bring you out, but we will not guarantee that you will see your child. We don't know where they will be. And fortunately for Elon, he was able to get out of the army because he had not seen his mother in a year. He was able to have this emotional connection and union with her. And she had written us a WhatsApp. She wrote Noya, the director of our Lone Soldier program, a beautiful WhatsApp. And in it, she said, we want to thank Nefesh B'Nefesh for this great opportunity to hug our son after a year of not seeing him. And just after so long of him being in Gaza, what you do is invaluable. There are no words to describe the days I spent with Elon. This is Elon Cohen. Elon Cohen was killed 3 weeks ago. And if I have to say that when we raise money, and sometimes we raise money and we put so much love into this work, and we don't always see where it goes to. But when you know that you have helped a mom who could not afford to come and see her son, and she was able to hug him, and you saw this love and spend time with him, and we gave her together, we gave her this time. It's something that I don't think there's a dollar amount or there are enough words to describe. On to good things. Most of you have been to our beautiful campus, and we opened our campus to do weddings for lone soldiers, for families from the South that were evacuated and they had no more wedding venue. And we have done multiple weddings, and it has been incredible. We've really been able to dress up our beautiful building and turn it into a festive wedding hall. And in the middle of a war, we had a soldier who got married. He got out on Saturday night. We got word on Friday that he's going to be getting out, and they wanted the wedding to be on Sunday. So if you can imagine, we pulled together a wedding from Friday until Sunday night. As you see, he came in his dirty boots and his uniform. And when we say we try to strengthen the spirit, because that's what this is about, Zionism is about the soul of the Jewish people. It is about our spirit. And as much as we have physical strength, our emotional resilience and our strength is what keeps us going as a people. And I mean, there are, to see a bride and a groom celebrating together and knowing that we could have a small hand in that is really such a privilege and such an honor. And our message to our Olim, and we always look to see where can we bring value? What can we do that other organizations are not doing? What can we do for Olim that have unique needs, that are alone in this country? And if we are not going to do it, then who will do it? So our motto always is, we've got your back. And I'm excited to share with you that in July, we will be opening up our new Nefesh B'Nefesh campus in the round tower of the Azrieli Center. And this space will hold the Lone Soldier headquarters. It will be the Young Professionals Hub. As you had once been to our hub in Rothschild, we needed more space, we were growing. It is a community center to bring people together, because boy, do people need to come together. And our new initiative is a resilience nexus. As a mother of somebody who's been in the army, we worry. When somebody gets a fender bender and gets sort of rear-ended in their car, you say, okay, you're not feeling the pain immediately, but sometimes the back pain comes out later. So we're all wondering what's going to come out later. And we also know that people here are walking around with trauma. Everybody here has trauma. But 80% of trauma does not turn into post-trauma if you can address it and you can help them. So thankfully, Israel is doing that, and communities are doing that. But again, who's helping Olim? So in this space, we're going to have various modalities, therapeutic modalities, to assist with mental health and to assist with resilience of the lone soldiers back into their lives. Not always so simple. My kids are being called up a second time, so we have soldiers and lone soldiers who are going back again and again. We have Olim whose parnassah has been hit, people who are living in Tel Aviv and simply anxious. And again, the space is going to be a loving space, a space to build community, and a space to help people come together and heal. So in the words of Dr. Maya Lechsan, Zionism is the Jewish soul, and we are interested in feeding that soul as much as we can. Thank you so, so much for your time and for letting me share with you what we're doing.
So Dorit, thank you, obviously, for all you do with Nefesh B'Nefesh does, and JNF is so proud to be part of your mission. And you took us through a little roller coaster today, but that's what life is like in Israel. It's a roller coaster. So thank you again for joining us. And join us next week when we welcome Emmy Award-winning actor Yuval David and Club Z founder Masha Merkulova. You can always learn more on the beauty of Zionism by visiting jnf.org/Zionism. To find out how you're impacting the land and people of Israel and continue supporting our work, visit jnf.org/support-Israel. As always, we encourage you to travel to Israel with us on a volunteer working mission. We continue to sell out these missions and have added dates through December of this year. Visit jnf.org/volunteer-IL to learn more and to register. I know I've given you a lot of different websites here, but don't forget, if you want to be part of the largest gathering of enthusiastic Zionists, join us for our global conference for Israel, taking place this year in Dallas, Texas, from November 14 to 17. Over 1,000 people have already registered. Michael Rappaport will be there, Rabbi David Wolpe, Professor Shai Davidai, and many more. You'll come away feeling inspired. Register now at jnf.org/global. We will see you next Wednesday at the same time. I'm Israel Chai.